Okay, in this video, I need to just go over some, I think, rules of thumb that we need to remind ourselves of, because the way we're working this project, and it is a writing project, but because we don't have any more time and we need to finish the project and actually get to the mechanics of developing it as a written presentation of data, um, we're not going to go into more investigation. Okay, so uh, we're going to have to make, at this point, we need to make some assumptions and some generalizations that, are generalizations that might change if we had more time or more data. But just remember this, okay? Perfection is usually, almost always, the enemy of done. All right, so what are we going to do? Spend another 3 months getting the data, or are we going to get this thing done? So it's a trade-off, and I think we're at a space here. If we keep it general and we know our limitations, we can work a good piece of writing. So here are some general notions, okay? And they're coming from a big picture analysis. I mean, sometimes it really helps to say, man, let's just forget about all this detail, all this terminology, all this, and let's just think about this thing in its very basic form. You got something that you can buy called a stock. You eventually want to make money off it somehow. If you're gonna avoid short selling, then you buy low and sell high. That's events. That's it. That's it. Now figure out the ways to do that. How are you gonna buy low? How are you gonna sell high? And or sell high. I'm getting sell high. Um, it's that simple. And you got to make a trade. So if you want to be the seller, you got to find a buyer. Someone has to desire it to own it. You have to be willing to be ready to sell it. And vice versa. If you want to buy it, you got to find someone to sell it. So you got to ask yourself, why are they buying? And why am I selling? And that sort of thing. So we can just take a very general picture of this and come up with some basic rules. Okay, doesn't it make sense, for example, to say, to just operate on this? If it were this easy to make money on stocks, why are people struggling with finances? That can actually put in a seed account. In other words, let's seed an account with $3,000, $5,000 and get started. In 10 years, we should have 50, 80,000. If it were that easy, how come people don't just automatically have this happen? So there's got to be dangers. It's got to be more complicated than it sometimes is made out to be, right? Now, why would someone try to convince you it's easy? If it were that easy, how come people aren't just constantly reaping the benefits of having their money in a stock account? So something tells me it's really not all that easy, okay? And if someone is trying to convince me that it is easy, at that point I got to say, I think either you don't understand the situation, because just philosophically I've got a problem with that notion. Um, and I'm not saying that it's just always centered on material things. For example, here's another question. Okay, if having a garden were that easy, how come not everyone? How come people are still hungry? I mean, just go plant some seeds in the ground and let them come up and eat the fruit. Well, wait a minute. Maybe the ground's horribly, depleted of minerals. Maybe it's hard to get the water. Maybe you don't have the climate right. Maybe you don't have the patience. Maybe actually you realize that it takes a lot of time to get that fertilizer and that soil ready, and you buy that seed and it takes 2 months for one little tomato to show up. How are you going to eat before those 2 months? And guess what? It's only one tomato. And do you really want to eat just one tomato a day or two? Once you get this thing producing, maybe you can live off tomatoes for a little bit, but you really want that? So, psychologically, in terms of waiting and time management and all that sort of stuff, it's not as easy as it looks. Okay, so that's just something we could bank on. The second thing is, I don't think you'd ever go wrong if you assume that whatever plan you come up with, like, you might be tempted to try to really analyze the market to find the secret. If you just assume that 100,000 people are doing the same thing, you'll be surprised how often you're right. And history kind of points this out, that someone thinks they invented something new, but the actual new idea is a very rare thing. And usually you find out that other people are doing the same thing. You just haven't found out about it yet. They're doing the same type of schooling method or model, or they're doing the same type of thing with their budget, or they're doing the same kind of thing with their cars or whatnot, or with. And so, if you think you've hit upon a plan, and the plan for its success depends on other people not doing what you're about to do, I don't know if that's a good thing. It's safer to assume that many more people are going to do it just as you. In other words, that you're not an original thinker. It's just safer to assume that you're not an original thinker. And about this time in Western history, about 100,000 people are having the same idea you're having, and they're going to start doing what you're going to try to do. So be careful with that. All right. Now, what about the notion of you can't depend on your portfolio. Okay, don't depend on your portfolio, because you got to be willing to lose everything you have. Because if you leave it in long term, what happens if a crash hits? And they hit quickly. I mean, the tells, if you know how to read the tells, apparently you can begin to sense when the bubble is overexpanding and getting ready to pop. But unless you don't know that, or you get a little overcommitted emotionally to your portfolio and you don't want to sell just yet, and all that sort of thing, what happens if you get stuck in that crash? So, the idea of portfolio growth and letting it mature, you got to be willing to lose it. So don't ever get to the point where you're actually depending on your portfolio for your income. I mean, now that's different from cashing out and then putting it into a safe account that would give you 10% annually just because it's a commercial bank and they're not investing your money. But if you leave it into that fund and you're trying to live off that interest as a retirement, I'm thinking about someone who's like invested 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and is now trying to live off that retirement. That interest, and they're supplementing it with Social Security and other stuff too, but it's a necessary part. Even though it still is just a part of the whole. If they lost that, it would really, really hurt them. You know what? You got to be ready to lose it all. Okay, so that would be a safe rule of thumb, which kind of undercuts the idea of using stocks as a retirement, right? Here's another notion. If you really are into this and you're doing this, you know what? You'll never go broke taking a profit. So someone might say, hey, why are you selling now? I mean, this stock has plenty more growth, so you're selling and you made $5 a share because you bought when it was 40 a share, and now you're selling when it's 45 a share. I'm telling you, this thing is going to 60. And you're like, well, it hasn't gone to 60 yet, and if I sell right now, I make $5 a share. So what if it does go to 60? I have a really good notion. What if it doesn't? I know right now, if I sell right now, I make $5 a share. So, you never know. You will never go broke on this if you just constantly settle for the profit. So that ties into the notion of, you got to see it happening, and you gotta make it. Okay, and you actually have to sell the thing in order for you to have any cash value. So here's another rule of thumb: that you got to remember that your portfolio value is not the same. It doesn't have any real value to it in the sense of actually helping you pay your bills. You got to sell to get the cash and then into your account, and then you got to get that cash wired to you or into your bank account. Okay, so just saying, oh, I've got this great portfolio, that still is not stable value because you haven't sold. It is only when you make the trade that you actually get the money. So the stock might look good on that day, but what happens if the next day it goes down? Your portfolio value shrinks and you don't have that value anymore. It literally disappeared on you. So that's not real-time value, or what's the word? Hard scrabble value, real value, cash value. Maybe that's what we're looking for. Okay, but the portfolio value is not really the amount of money you have in the bank. Okay. You have to sell first and get that money secured and then deposit it away into your account for you to actually say you made money. See, now I'll see a lot of, it's tempting to have a lot of people say, oh, I'm making money today. Well, how? Well, my portfolio is going up. Have you sold? No, then you're not making money. Okay, because you haven't increased your actual cash level. Think in terms of cash. Your cash has not gone up. The value of your stock has, but you haven't sold your stock yet. So you have to sell. And see, the thing is, a lot of people, they get emotionally connected to their stocks. And it's just hard for them to sell. Or they don't know when to sell. That's another big thing. So a good idea would be, watch out with actually how you determine value. Now I'm going to stop this video because it's already getting 10 minutes and we need to talk about some other things. So just for ease of uploading and downloading and getting it to play on your screen, whatnot, I'm going to split this up.